It's the Wake Up Call with Ed and Paul, the podcast about stories in business and in life with your hosts Ed Fox and Paul Odendahl.
I love you guys.
Well, g'day viewers. It's the Wake Up Call with Ed and Paul. I'm your host, Ed Fox, and my co-host this week is Paul Odendahl. And our first part 2 episode, Chris Tice is back from Eagle Fire in Richmond. Chris, once wasn't enough? Like you had to be a part of this craziness twice?
How could you not? How could you not? You say it's craziness. I call it happiness. I'm so joy-filled when I get to hang out with incredible people, and you two are absolutely incredible. So first and foremost, thank you so very much for having me back. It's an honor. It's a privilege. And anytime, guys, anytime I can, guys, I'd join in with you guys anywhere, anytime. So, yeah.
Well, thanks, Chris.
Hey, Chris, I got a question. See, I'm always good
it.
at interrupting my co-host.
You're good at it, but I'm good with it.
Do you remember, I was so excited about the last call. Do you remember what shirts we were wearing? I think I have a different shirt on this time, but I think my co-host wears the same shirt on every show. I think it's the only shirt he has. So we're starting a fund drive for shirts for Australians. It's going to be called Shirts for Australians. And we're going to do this fund drive for Shirts for Australians.
Actually, I could get behind that. But in my defense, I wash on Sundays, and this is my Tuesday shirt. So I wear it on Tuesday. Sometimes I'll even wear it on Thursday, and then I wash it on Sunday, and it's back again ready for Tuesday. So, and I actually have 2 of these now, just so you know. I bought it in a 3X, which is this one. It's a little bigger. And then I bought it in a 2X when I wanted to show off my fat. Yep. So, that's my story.
And
I
could be wearing the same shirt too. So, it's okay. I'm not even worried about it.
All right, Mr. 3X, before you gobble up all the time, let's get to our guest.
So, Chris, we enjoyed having you on the first episode. Well, not the first episode, but we enjoyed the first conversation. So we wanted you back for a deeper dive into who is Chris Tice. And maybe you've got a story or two on what I want to hear about. Actually, is I want to hear about how you turned a failure into a success.
Well, so really a lot of this stems back. I get a lot of questions on Eagle Fire in Richmond. I know we talked about this last time, how I came up with the name. But the eagle, I talked about the pride of the eagle and just what it stands for, but it also stems from being an Eagle Scout, and honoring my scouting heritage and my family and in what scouting is and what it was for me. And so growing up, it was just my dad and I. My mom left when I was 1.5 years old. And when I was 10 years old, my dad was getting ready to get remarried. And because we became a blended family, I had a little stepbrother. They called us into their bedroom before they got married and said, "Here's the expectations of you two." And it started with the whole, you guys are probably going to fight and there's things you're not always going to get along with. And I was like, okay, that's understandable. And then it turned into, here's what we see for you in your future. And mine was, you would amount to nothing. You wouldn't be able to do anything extraordinary. And ultimately, can't would be a part of your regular vocabulary. And as a 10-year-old boy, I was crushed. And one of the things that I want to highlight in this, because my inspiration comes from forgiveness. I've forgiven them for that because 1, I was not the perfect child growing up. Let's just be real about that. And 2, we have a great relationship now. Did it hurt back then? Yes. But turning a failure into a success is you've got to look at opportunity where it lies. And being a believer, God doesn't set out to intentionally harm us, but he also put a resilience in me and an ability, an opportunity to understand I can overcome this. Now, I didn't realize that at that age. That's now. But at 14, I had a Boy Scout leader who was our scoutmaster, who was also a great businessman. But more importantly, he loved pouring life into people. And him and I almost always were 2 of the first ones to wake up. And one of the things I miss dearly, but also enjoyed, was we would sit and have a cup of coffee together and watch the sun come up. And on this particular morning, he looked at me, he said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I looked at him, I said, "John," I said, "I don't know." He goes, "Why?" I said, "Well, because I'm really not good at anything." And all those emotions and all those words came flooding into me from that meeting in the bedroom with my dad and my future stepmom. And I said, "Because I can't really do anything. So I don't know." And my whole life, I'd always wanted to be a firefighter. I have family who's firefighters. And he looked at me and he said, "Chris, I have seen the leader in you. Don't you ever think you can't do something. Because I want you to know you are capable." And so that has now led into my life quote of "can't never did." Because using that word keeps you from doing the things that you are absolutely capable of doing. If you two said, "Well, I can't speak that well, or I can't edit, or I can't do this," we wouldn't be here today doing this call together. And so my thing now is to not allow people to use can't in their vocabulary. And that's my inspiration. That's my inspirational speaking. That's my living life fulfilled. It's to take these failures or these nuances of potential lost opportunity and turning it around. I don't remember. I think I said this in the last interview, but if I didn't, or if this is the first time you all are hearing from me, there's a great video by an inspirational man named Prince EA, and it's called The Graveyard. And the premise of it is, where do all great ideas go? Where is the richest place on planet Earth? It's the graveyard. Because unfortunately, so many opportunities have been missed because we've allowed those can'ts, those "I'm not good enough," or listening to that negativity to take over our lives. And when we do that, we miss so much. And I hate seeing that. And so to take what was potentially a bad example and a bad experience and turn it around into something where I can say, "Listen, in this respect, I've been there. I've done that. I was told that. I did become a firefighter. I did get my Eagle Scout. I did do decently well in school. I did graduate. I did go on later on to go back into college. I'm raising a family." And that's not to my own credit. That's God coming into my life, putting life into me, but also creating a community around me, putting that mentor in my life. And I've had so many other mentors since then that have raised me and continue to raise me. I mean, I look up to you two. Paul, I've only known you a short while. Ed, I've known you for close to a year now. And whether it's been in the networking events we're a part of, or being on here with you guys, listening to you guys, whatever it is, now I look for those opportunities to say, where can I? How can I? When can I? And then I add my why to it. Why am I doing this? So that's just a huge part of where I'm at and what I want to do.
This is not the platform for me to get emotional, and I do get emotional. You know what? And we do have fun on this, and we do joke. I watch Ed's facial expressions and how he reacts to conversations with some of our guests. Michael Weitzman was one that reminded me when he talked about his mental health issues. And you and I have such a similar story. And you're right, we've only recently met one another. You have no idea. Ed was so blessed to be raised in a different atmosphere. And parents will be parents, and no family situation is perfect.
No.
But I was beat on a regular basis, not that we need to be sharing this on the show, but beat on a regular basis by my own father, saying how he wished I didn't have his name and that I would never amount to anything. I mean, he would constantly wail on me when he had too much to drink, and would be beating me and talking about the fact that you're never going to be anything. You're never going to amount to anything. You're just a piece of shit. That's what you are. You're a nothing, and you're never going to be anything. You and I's stories are so similar, and it's such a blessing to be around people like yourself, Ed Fox. Yes, you can overcome this, and you can live a productive and successful life. You don't have to believe and buy into what is being beat into your head when you're a child.
Well, That's
And I was watching him. I was watching his facial expression as you started your story, and just watching how he was listening and reacting to it.
and to catch that, you'd have to watch the YouTube videos, but they're not going to hear that. They're not going to see that on the podcast. But to your point, both Paul and Chris, is I think what I hear you saying, it's not what happens, it's how you choose to handle it. Do you choose to make it a motivating effect that pushes you forward, or do you choose to keep it as a detrimental mental effect that holds you back? And I think we all, what is it, like oscillate? That's my college word for the day, back and forth between those, right? But the key is we pick ourselves up from any failure, we dust ourselves off, and we turn ourselves around, right? And sometimes I like to say that failure is a comma, not a period. Or in Australia, we'd say full stop. You know, a failure doesn't mean you got to quit. Failure just means you got to pick yourself up and try it a different way, right? And so it's taking that, you know, there's a lot of talk right now about white privilege. And I think there's all sorts of privileges. I don't think it's limited to just the color of our skin privilege. You guys, I had positive parents. Now, they went through tough times. We were poor. I remember scrounging through the lounge and finding a 50-cent piece, you know, to go buy some hot chips that we could have on bread and butter. But I had plenty of ketchup sandwiches, okay, because there was nothing to put on the bread. We raised half a dozen chickens. And I remember one year my dad was sick and wasn't working on roofs, and we ate eggs every which way you can. And for the next 10 years, I didn't want to touch an egg. Right. I was so sick of eggs. My wife tells a story about her dad was a long haul truck driver, and he bought a truckload of parsnips, and that's what got him through a winter. Everything that they could do with parsnips. To this day, you know, 50 years later, she won't touch parsnips because that's all they lived on for a whole winter. And so we all have our struggles, but most of the people out there don't know what those struggles look like. So what do you talk much about mindset, Chris, in the stuff that you do on what your mindset is, or do you have a specific mindset that you use when you face adversity?
Well, absolutely. So my big thing is, and there's kind of a two-part to this, and it's I am statements. And you've got to make those as positivity statements. One of the big shifts I've had with being willing to share this story, not just overcome it, but share it, which has also helped me along the way and created a more positive mindset, is you talked about how we view these, circumstances, these stories, these experiences in our lives, especially the negative ones. I mean, it's real easy to look at the positive and go, oh, yay, here I am. But sometimes the negative, we want to kind of shelter it. And so one of them is share your story. And this is a quote I hear a bunch. I first learned it from a guy named Pete Vargas, but it's your message matters. And so then in that is we take these I am statements because, and this is something that Tony Robbins talks about, Ed Milet talks about. I know I'm doing a lot of name dropping today, but these are some of the people that, like you two, inspire me. It's things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And that can be a hard pill to swallow. The first time I heard that, I was like, no. But the more I changed it, the more I allowed myself to change, the more I started saying, you know what? I am strong. I am able. I am worthy. I am great. I am one in whom Christ dwells. I started to realize as I share this message and as I coach people, as I help others along, this shift has allowed other people around me to be more positive. And it's not even just from coaching. It's from smiling more when I walk around the gym or at the store. It's being able to laugh at a time where maybe I wouldn't normally laugh, but it brings my spirits up.
Right. Yep.
And so changing your mind to recognizing, you know what, this was a really, really tough situation. But I can either let it drag me down or I can find a way. And this is not, it's easier said than done. It's not always daisies and roses. I get that. And there are situations that are way worse than mine. I still had a great upbringing. We still did amazing things together. I don't share this story to vilify my parents. It's in the hope that, one, as parents, we won't make the same mistake. They've admitted to it. I've talked to my dad about it. And so, but it's this hope that as we overcome, we will help others do the same. And so that's why leadership is so important to me. It's not just about rank, title, and position. It's about teaching and guiding others to rise up and above it. And when we do that, we have a better world. I'm not the perfect parent. I've definitely had my fair share of mistakes with my kids. I haven't always been the best leader. I have made my mistakes. I've apologized for them. But the biggest difference comes in, do you sit back and go, oh, I'm a bad dad. Oh, I can't be a good leader. Or do you say, okay, how do we learn from this? You become the example. Because if you want to be a leader, you've got to be the example. And you shift your mind to say, I can do this. And when that happens, great things will come.
Chris, I got a question. Ed brought this up before. Choice obviously has something to do with this, but as a child, it's difficult to understand that choice. And you mentioned earlier, this didn't happen just overnight. And as an adult, there was more of an enlightenment to the fact that you are valuable, you are worth something, you are worthy, you have the ability to do things. Choice has everything to do with it, but you don't understand that as a child. It's a blessing when you have influential people around you that help lift you up and believe in you as an adult as you get older and help you to see the other side of that negativity. But for myself, and I'm wondering for you, coming from that past, and clearly my past was a little darker than your past, but coming from that past, has it assisted you, or for me, it assists me in staying humble? Because I know
absolutely,
people that get to that point and their heads are just so big and their egos are so big and it's all about them. And to me, it's a blessing. To me, I now know that I can accomplish things, and it's a blessing that I can have an influence on others. And I thank you for the comments that you've made. But I also don't let my head get so big that it can't fit on the screen. And I default right back to a humble beginning. And just remember, I thank the Lord for all these things that are occurring. And I thank the Lord that the Lord has kept me and walked me through all of this.
So my answer to that, and this is where I look up to both of you, is in the success that you two have had. Even with as little time as I've known you, I can see it in the leaders that you two are, is because of that humbleness. Yes, we joke. Yes, we have fun. But at the same time, at the end of the day, to have a conversation like this, and even though the three of us have totally different pasts and paths, we can still come together. And we are. And it's because of that humbleness. Mine stems from still having a family that keeps me grounded. In a lot of ways, especially prior to my stepmom being there, I mean, decent gap from 1.5 to 10.
Right.
I had my grandmas, I had my grandpas, I had my aunts and uncles, and they were huge and still continue to be a stability for me. So this whole mindset thing, yes, you use those I am statements to help pump yourself up. Yes, you tell yourself you can do it, and you celebrate those wins and those successes. You learn from these failures and these mistakes, and you grow from them. But at the same time, when you're on that mountaintop, you're not there to just look down and go, look at me, I'm the king of the world, because at any point in time, you can slide down. I look down to remember how I got up there.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's from what, without negating the quote I said earlier of what happens for you, not to you. When I look at what did happen to me in that time, I look at it as moments to recognize, how am I treating my kids? How am I treating the other people that I influence? How am I relating to the different clients that I have, to the people I'm speaking to when I'm on stage, when I work with the youth group at the church, when I'm with the Boy Scouts, when I'm working with the person at the cash register, if they're having a bad day, I can smile and just maybe even give them that 3 seconds of have a great day and see them smile, even though they may not be having one. I'm not saying it so I can go, ooh, look at me. You know, I have this, I have that. No, it's because I want to encapsulate this humbleness to never let my head be bigger than the screen, as you said, Paul. And those moments in life now I recognize are there for me to remember that I'm not perfect and I don't need to treat other people as if they have to be perfect around me.
Right.
Good point.
And that is a matter as a parent, a grandparent, aunt, uncle, as a pastor, as a business leader, a manager, trainer, CEO, is you've got to remain in that humble state, because if there's one thing this world is good at, it's making you humble. You will get caught up in it if you don't find a way to keep yourself humble, whether that's having other people around you, remembering the things that have made that or what made you, and or recognizing that you have a community built for you for a reason. And that's to not only help you along climbing the mountain, but also when you look around you and you take in that scene, you recognize what it took to get you there, and you reach down and you start helping others do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly right, Chris. And it kind of reminds me of that, the passion of mine. One of the things that I'm struggling with right now is I know that there is a lot of young people out there that are watching the news, right?
Oh,
and are
yeah.
believing what's on the news. And those of us that have got some years on us realize that the news is only there to generate profits. The reason that
they're there to entertain.
and TV has the news isn't to report the story. That's not to say that there's not some great journalists out there that do a great job of bringing things to light, but we have to use some discernment to filter through all of that crap. And I don't care which side of the political aisle you're on, or whatever is your passion, whatever side of that argument you're on, there is always a bias, right? We always carry bias. But those young kids that don't have that influence, that aren't told that there is different ways to look at it. It's like that if you're a nail or if you're a hammer, right? If you're a nail, you think everything that's hitting you is because it's a hammer. I was talking to a young black kid the other day, and he said he gets so scared when the cops follow him, like when he's just driving around. And I'm like, dude, I get scared when the cops follow me. Well, of course, then another guy chimes in and says, yeah, but you're not going to get shot for the color of your skin. I said, no, that's a different issue. I said, I understand that's a problem and that is an issue, but let's focus on the fact that just because you get nervous or anxious because somebody's following you, like a cop, I don't know about you guys, but you ever had a cop follow you and like turn a different street just to make sure?
Oh yeah.
So that's one of the challenges. And so, and then if you're the hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So you come down on everybody like a ton of bricks, and we have to learn that sometimes we're the nail, sometimes we're the hammer, right? And you were going to say something?
Yeah, well, one of the things to that, and it can be in any situation, is, and it becomes very unfortunate, and this comes back to also part of that being humble, and especially as a leader. And again, it's not about rank, title, and position. If you're standing there and you have a solution, leaders step up. And my point to that is too often we look at the problem and we get stuck in the problem instead of getting into the solution. And the solution is what's going to take care of the problem. But if we're just constantly focused on the problem, and those around, especially when you do get caught in the rank, title, and position, and I'm not knocking anyone that has that, but is having this humbleness that maybe the answer doesn't lie in Chris. Maybe Ed has a suggestion. Maybe Paul has a suggestion, or wherever, whatever group you're in. But when we seek those solutions and then we take action on them, we can move forward and progress. I mean, that goes all the way right back to those I am statements and recognizing that I am not the product of the environment that I was being raised in. I mean, there's so much more to that story and how I was being raised and the things I grew up around and seeing and being a part of that I never wanted my kids to see or be a part of. But there's still been plenty of times where I know for a fact my voice was the voice of the things that happened back then.
Right.
And I have to overcome that. So instead of getting focused on the problem, I got to focus on the solution. And this works at all levels. And it's just something that we as leaders or people who want to see change for the positive have got to get focused on.
Exactly. And one of the things, like you were talking about earlier, where you were saying that, it's the words you say and the things you do that can help other people around you, because we're looking down from on high, and we can bring those solutions. Those of us that have been through those challenges can bring those solutions. One of my solutions, I was so depressed as a kid, I would cry myself to sleep at nights. I had no reason to be depressed, right? But depression's a funny thing. It doesn't need a reason. Doesn't need a reason to make those chemicals messed up in your head. And that's why I like to make people laugh. That's why I'm always dropping dad jokes. I was on a networking call with 40 other people the other day, and I said, with my barter company, I'm looking for new restaurants down in Nashville. I said, I heard there was a new restaurant that just opened. It's called, the restaurant's called Karma. They don't have menus. You just get what you deserve. And the rest of that meeting, people had smiles on their faces. That's what drives me. My business coach said, what drives you? I said, making people smile and helping others grow. Everybody else was throwing out finances. Yeah, money is important. You need to be able to pay the bills. But I don't do things for the money. My wife and I together live comfortably. But for me, helping people smile and helping people grow, when I can open up their minds to the capacity to accept more, to understand they're children of a king, they can be so much more. Whether they believe in him or not does not matter at this point of me being able to help them. Now, they want to get where they want to get. They're going to have to believe in him at some point, right?
Oh, yeah.
But that doesn't mean we can't help them, right? It doesn't matter. So I love helping people. I love making them smile. I heard the other day that a toddler laughs 300 times a day. A 40-year-old laughs 12 times a day.
Yeah.
There's a problem with that. And like you said earlier, laughter, smile makes you feel better. Even if when I get depressed, one of the things I do if I'm self-conscious and there's nobody around, I'll just let out a loud laugh. I don't feel like laughing. But just after you've laughed, you feel better. Stupid how that works, but it works.
Well, psychology shows with the I am statements, one thing I wanted to add to the I am statements is if there are days that you're just not feeling it and you're still using them, or maybe you had a goal and you didn't quite get to it, don't let the I am statements stretch you too far. Don't get down on yourself if you're like, man, today just wasn't great. Okay, was it at least good? There's a huge difference between A performances and B performances. And sometimes a B performance happens. It just does. I mean, there was times, a few times in school, not very many, where I had straight A's and then I got the 1B and I wanted to let it tear me down instead of going, okay, what can I do to fix it? So, those I am statements are there, but psychology has actually shown that just putting your, if you're on YouTube, you can kind of see me putting your hands up in the hero pose. So you put your fist against your ribs or down towards your waist, and you puff up your shoulders and your chest, and you just stand in front of the mirror for 5 minutes and just talk great to yourself. The psychological change that will happen is immense in how you're going to treat the rest of the day or the moment that you're stuck in. Listen, if you do that in the morning and all of a sudden you hit lunchtime, you're like, man, this is not going well. Go get in front of that mirror or meditate, whatever works for you. Do that. But it's also just not getting trapped in this cycle of I'm not good enough. I can't do it. That's like the last thing we want to do, because if we truly want change in this world, we're going to have to change ourselves. We're going to have to change the outlook. We're going to have to, if these experiences that I went through are so bad and I don't want my kids to go through it, I also don't want other kids going through it. So if I can share this story, and please don't take any of this as judgment for those of you that are listening or watching. I'm not here to judge you. Like I said, I'm not perfect. But if there's something that resonates in you that it's like, man, I grew up that way, and you're a new parent or parent of a teenager. I mean, I've got 18, 6, and 4. I'm all over the place. And you're starting to go, man, I do that. Don't let it be condemnation. Be convicted to make a change. They'll see that change in you. I promise you, they will see that change in you.
And also to understand that it's not the destination, it's the journey. You got to
Oh
enjoy
yeah.
the journey. My dad said that all the time in the way he did different things. He said, think about the stories we tell when we're sitting around doing whatever we choose to do, whether it's drinking tea and coffee or having a beer or whatever. We talk about the tough times. We don't tend to talk about the easy times. You know, we don't talk about where we threw the hook in the river and pulled out the 20-pound flathead or catfish. No, we talk about the one that got away, right? We talk about the struggles. We don't, it's fun to talk about the hole in one. But, you know, most of the time it's talking about how we bent the bloody golf club, threw it over the fence, chucked a fit, enjoy the journey, not just the destination. There's a great poem called The Dash between that goes on the gravestone between when we're born and when we die. And the end doesn't matter. For those of us that are believers, we believe we know where we're going, but the dash is what matters. What makes up your dash is what matters. And you can turn yourself around at any time you want. It's a choice. And the next time we talk, because, you know, I know why we did a second part now. We got to do a third part. I want to talk about the imposter syndrome that a lot of us suffer from, that we think we're not good enough, when in fact we are good enough. We're all struggling just like anybody else, you know, but we have some skills that other people don't. You know, what do they say? My dad used to say, in the land of the blind man, the one-eyed man is king. Right? In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And that's true. If you have a certain skill, you might not be better than certain people at this thing, but you're better at the thing that you know how to do. And so I think a lot of people suffer from that imposter syndrome, and all of what we've talked about could lead into that one next.
Well, and part of with that too, imposter syndrome is also comparison syndrome.
That's right.
I think those two go hand in hand, and I've been there, done that. That can be a very scary place to be. So yeah, it's just our unique, we're gifted with unique talents and abilities and skills, but you know, I'm not always the best at everything I do. And so being able to seek out guys like you two and other people, and like I said earlier about this community that lifts you up and raises you up, but can also keep you humble, there's balance in that. And there's times the scales are going to get tipped one way or the other, but coming back to your center and having the humbleness to understand that is huge. And I'm using this as kind of a segue to the next time we talk with imposter syndrome, comparison syndrome, is being able to find that balance, having that humbleness, but also celebrating those wins, learning from the losses. It's huge. And it's so impactful, and it's so critical to having greatness in this world, because greatness is in us. There's no two ways about it.
And that's a great place to end right there, because we're out of time today. Paul and I and you are on to the next call, but Paul's got something to add.
Of course. So Chris, thank you very much. And you may not be aware of this, but nobody watches our show. So, and probably because of Ed. So I can put my heart right out there on the sleeve. And I'll tell you, honestly, I'd like to talk about this one time too. But honestly, instead of going to the mirror and putting my hands on my hips or on my ribs and puffing up and all that, when I'm having struggles, when I'm down a little bit, doesn't happen too often. Thank the Lord. I'm really centered around some amazing people like yourself. I call Ed. So instead of the mirror, I call Ed. So as I mentioned before, for me personally, the people that you surround yourself, as opposed to the family maybe that you grew up in or were born into, can be an amazing influence on your life and the choices that you make. That just and help you through those struggles. And Ed is one of those. I just pick up the phone and call Ed.
Thanks, Paul. That shows us that we've got a lot of different tools in our toolbox that can help. You know, the shifting, you called it an adjustable wrench. We call it a shifting spanner, right? It doesn't solve every problem. You know, sometimes we need the right tool for the job, and having that toolbox, whether it's the stance, whether it's laughing out loud, whether it's calling a friend that can help pick you up, they're all good tools and we should all use them. Hey, Chris, we've got to get off the line, but how should somebody reach out to you if they want to get in touch? What's the best way?
Social media, Facebook and LinkedIn are both Chris Tice, Tice, Chris with a CH. And then on my Instagram, it's at Tice Inspires. So those are kind of the three easiest ways. And then you can connect business-wise or personal-wise through those.
Cool. And shoot me an email with all those contacts and we'll throw it in the show notes. Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Have a great day. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thanks,
I appreciate it. Many blessings to you both and to everyone that's out there listening or watching.
Thanks. Well, that's it for this edition of the Wake Up Call with Ed and Paul. Thanks for listening. As always, we appreciate it. And if you'd like to subscribe, you can do that on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube. Thanks a lot and have a great day.